Hello, this is Thilo Sarrazin. I'm glad to speak to you on BBC, Have Your Say, all over the world. I am the author of a book which can be named in English, that Germany is doing itself away. It has been a very successful and the controversial book. It still is. It deals with the three issues. Firstly, the German is shrinking. The generation is the 1/3 the smaller than the generation before. Second, the brightest people get the fewest babies. And thirdly, if we need immigration, which one can discuss, we have the wrong kind of immigration. What we need is immigration of the qualified, the professionals. What we get is immigration from countries with the low educational level and with the professional, the qualification, and which with difficulties to integrate in the German the society. This the problem cannot be separated from the fact that 90% of our immigrants are from Muslim countries.
Mr. Sarrazin, thank you for joining us on World Have Your Say. Wherever you're listening to us here in Berlin, you can leave your messages at facebook.com/World Have Your Say. Along with me and Mr. Sarrazin in the studio here in Berlin is Steve Evans, the BBC's correspondent in Berlin, and two guests who we've invited to take part. I'll let the first gentleman who's sitting to my right introduce himself.
Hello, my name is Ulaş Atay. I'm a journalist and I'm of German-Turkish background. And my question would be that around 15 million people with a migrant background are living in Germany. And actually, of course, every human being on this planet has got a migrant background. But I'm really irritated by the fact that with his book, Mr. Sarrazin is actually dividing this country instead of unifying it. So, Mr. Sarrazin, why are you actually dividing the country?
I'm not dividing as a country. I am pointing at some facts. If I take the migrant population, which is, as you said, about the 60 million people, then there are about the 12 million people from the non-Muslim countries, and they have no integrational problems at all. And all the integrational problems which we have are concentrated on migrants from Turkey, Arab countries, from Africa, from Muslim countries. This is the statistical fact, and to call a fact is not dividing people.
I would like to remind you that actually you, as you know, like the German government has officially invited these people to Germany in 1955, in 1960, in 1961, 1962, making contracts with the Turkish government or the Tunisian government. So these guys have actually, these people have worked here, they have families here, and most of these people that you define as Muslims wouldn't like to be defined as Muslims. Before that, they would like to be defined as human beings or members of the society. How do you see that?
People who are here are welcome to stay, to work, and to integrate. This at the beginning. Secondly, in 1973, when there was the so-called guest workers stop, there worked in Germany the 700,000 Turkish guest workers. We have now in Germany the 3 million people of Turkish origin. In 1973, there worked about 50,000 Arabian guest workers in Germany. We now have more than 1 million the people in Germany with Arab origin. On the other hand, in Germany, that they used to work 1.7 million the Italian guest workers, and now we have in Germany 500,000 people of taking origin. What's the point is,
say something?
People are not here because they were invited to work. People are here because they choose the Germany as a land which is comfortable to live in.
That's not true. They have been invited here. There have been contracts with these countries, and they have actually these people.
But one moment though. Let's be clear.
The 3 million Turkish people which are here.
Let's be clear.
Today.
If we go back, actually, this year will see the 50th anniversary of the first treaty between Turkey and Germany, which agreed that workers would come from Turkey to Germany. But now, people of Turkish descent do have the option to leave. They're not here because of those treaties of many years ago. They're here because they want to stay here.
Exactly, and around 4 million people have left already. I mean, many people are actually leaving, and many people are leaving because they're not happy in Germany, in the sense that they don't feel welcome. And I think Germany is a modern country and should be multicultural, and people should feel welcome in Germany.
Yes, this is Randolph. I have a mixed background. My family's German. I was born in the U.S., but I've lived in Germany for many, many years. One of the questions that I had for Mr. Sarrazin was, I think for those listeners who may not know, Mr. Sarrazin held a very high position at the German Bundesbank, and due to his statements and due to his book and due to his, let's call it his position, was forced out of the German bank. Now, one of my questions is, does Mr. Sarrazin, do you feel that the political correctness, the era, the air in the society of political correctness, do you believe that is endangering a strong democracy?
Well, this is the difficult the question. It always takes courage to express an opinion which is not shared by everybody.
Correct.
And in the Germany, it is getting more and more difficult to have this courage because most people are not very courageous, and those people who are cautious think twice before they express their opinions, and I think this is a development which can endanger the democracy. What I experienced over what I have experienced over the last few months was extraordinary.
And Steve Evans, just to explain to people who haven't followed the story of Mr. Sarrazin's book, it's indisputable, isn't it, that it has shifted subjects which weren't in the mainstream into mainstream discourse.
Absolutely. Because of the past of this country, clearly discussions of race are very, very difficult. And there's absolutely no doubt that this book, which this man beside me has written, is, well, I heard it described as the best non-fiction seller in Germany since the war. So it's a very, very successful book. And it's also true that he's addressed things, he's gone in territory, which is very, very difficult territory. One of the things I'm curious about, sir, is you seem to attribute Jewish success, a lot of this is in quotes, to genetics. What do you mean by that?
Well, we know that the success of the Jewish people in countries all over the world, the economic success is far above average, and the scientific the success as well. And we also know that the measured intelligence of the Jewish people is also above average, and we know that part of the human intelligence, not all of it, is inherited. These are facts which explain themselves.
Well, except that the people who are specialists in this field say that you don't attribute the success of a whole people through genetics.
No,
that was something which went out of fashion a long time ago, 65 years ago.
I have only observations to make, and when I observe that in 1910 in Germany, the 2% of the population were of the Jewish origin, but they contributed the 25% of the lawyers and 25% of our medical
Nothing
doctors.
to do with culture
then,
or class?
Well, it's a matter of culture, but also the way the Jewish people they procreated in Eastern Europe, where they used to stay for about the 500 years, was also a matter of culture, because it was an honor for the daughter of the rich merchant to marry a poor rabbi. And so the procreation of the bride people was a matter of cultural choice.
Let me clarify this. I mean, I'm stealing your time, Ross.
You're not stealing anyone's time, don't worry.
Let me clarify this then. Underachievement in Muslim communities in this country is partly, maybe largely,
no,
because
it does not
genetics.
go the other way around. I always stress in my book the fact that the lack of success of economic and social success of part of the Muslim people all over Europe are due to cultural factors which have to do with the Muslim faith. I have the witness for that. The falls
Mrs. Sarrazin, don't you think that you actually put the Muslims into the position of the new Jews of Germany? You kind of turned them into the new Jews of Germany.
No.
Meaning that you actually separate them from the public.
The Jewish people were overachievers. Part of the Muslim people are underachievers.
The Muslim people could be overachievers as well if you would have brought educated people over to Germany. But just Germany just wanted to have simple workers. So these people are just simple workers.
Let's assume for a moment that the integration policy in Germany was very bad or was not existent at all. Okay, and then we observe this with the same bad policy. Polish people and people from Russia and people from Vietnam and so on integrate very well.
But don't you think that Germany has a special responsibility? Don't you think that Germany has a special responsibility?
One minute,
finish my sentence. Integrate badly, so this points back to the different groups of people, and what I address, and this is the core of the scandal, is that the economic and integrational the success of groups can be explained by the factors within the groups itself.
And let's hear from you, Ulash. Do you accept Thilo Sarrazin's point that Muslim immigrants in Germany, in terms of education, perform less well than any other group of immigrant? Do you accept that's true?
That's not right, because first of all, I have to say that these people, and I know a lot of people because of my work, that they actually don't define themselves as Muslims in first place. And the first danger is...
They define themselves as German?
They define themselves as German, as human, as citizens, and stuff like that. So what Thilo Sarrazin actually does is to, force these people to define themselves as Muslims, and this is, I guess, it's a danger.
No, I totally disagree.
The second point is, before that, I would like to say that when you say these people are not integrated.
Before we shift on, let's let Randolph pick up on the point you're making.
I don't really want to. I don't want to get into the discussion regarding how people define themselves. But I have lived in many countries around the world. I lived in Sweden, Spain, France, Italy, all through the Middle East. Now, my experience in these countries is, whether it's a policy of Germany or not, I don't know. But what I can tell you is, in all these countries that I have lived in, it's always the same people, and it is the Muslims. I'm sorry to say.
What do you want to say? So do you want to say Muslims are stupid?
No. What I'm saying is, I don't know what it is, but
but the argument might be that something's going wrong. Right. If in all these European countries it is Muslim groups.
The point is this: you cannot single out Mr. Sarrazin for pointing out a simple fact. He's only pointing out a fact. Now, this fact I can corroborate because I've lived in Sweden. Who are the biggest social, what do you want to call it, groups?
Yeah.
They're the Muslims. Same in Spain, same in France, same in Italy. It's the same everywhere.
Let me put it that way. There, you can make, you can divide people up into good people and bad people.
I'm not doing that.
I'm doing that. And the point is that it doesn't matter if they're Muslim, if they're from Sweden or from Tunisia. It depends on what their social class is. It depends on what their education is.
I disagree. Their social class has nothing to do with their behavior and how they act within the society.
Let me remind everyone, if they're just turning on their radio, you're listening to World Have Your Say live on the BBC. We're in Berlin for the second day running, and our guest for the entire hour is Thilo Sarrazin. Many of you will remember his resignation from the board of the Bundesbank. It was because of his views on immigration and his views on Muslims in Germany. He's also written a book which has sold in the region of 1.2 million copies since its release last year. And as Steve Evans, the BBC's correspondent in Berlin, has been explaining, it's entirely shifted the debate about immigration in Germany. But of course, we're not just talking about this one country. We're talking about the issues of immigration, the issues of integration in every country in the world. So wherever you're listening, if you'd like to take part, do call us, country code 44 2070 83 72 72, or you can get in touch through Facebook, facebook.com/World Have Your Say. Now, we've got a guest in London and a guest in Munich who I will bring in just a moment, but we've got a huge pile of messages for you, sir. So let's quickly go through a couple of them. Ehi in Nigeria wants to say to you, Germans in Nigeria are not required to take lessons in civics and learn to adopt the culture and language. They're allowed to establish German schools for their children and run their companies with German managers in the German language. What's the difference between what they do in Nigeria and what some Muslims do in Germany?
Well, I think they all speak good English, and they all earn their own living. And this is the difference. If the Muslim, the people in Germany spoke all good German, and if they all earned their own living, there would be much less of a problem.
Thank you, Ehi, for that message from Nigeria. Facebook.com if you would like to comment as you listen. Now let's bring in Nabila, who's a student based in London. But Nabila, I understand your parents are of Algerian descent and you grew up in the suburbs in France. What's your question for Thilo Sarrazin?
It's a very straightforward one, actually. Mr. Sarrazin seems to be stigmatizing a religious group, i.e. Muslims in particular, for supposedly failing to integrate, for supposedly being underachievers. But doesn't he see that it is fundamentally a socio-economic problem that we're facing, that basically Muslims are the ones that are more likely to be discriminated against and hence not being given the same opportunities, whether it comes to education, job opportunities or housing. So why is it that when they go abroad and decide to have a life away from being constantly exposed to discrimination, when they are treated in a fairer manner in other countries, why is it that they end up doing extremely well?
Well, I don't know the conditions in England or in London, but I don't know the conditions in Germany. And in the Germany, Turkish or the Arab people are not more or less discriminated than people from Italy or from the Poland or from Vietnam. And most of them don't even feel they're discriminated. They are the problems stem from the fact that there are underachievers in the school, that there are underachievers on the labor market, that they have a very high dependency ratio on the welfare, and that that part of them keeps very much to themselves and does not mixed enough with the receiving society.
Mr. Sarrazin, let's put that back. Nabila, do you think to some extent this is a self-inflicted situation which Muslim communities can end up in?
Absolutely not. How can you possibly overcome what is essentially institutional racism? It's not up to you to overcome your situation in a fair and tolerant environment when the state itself makes sure that because you have an Islamic sounding name, because you have an undesirable postcode, because you have an identity which is part and parcel of German identity, but also have ties with a country of origin, you are going to be discriminated against. That. How can you possibly flourish and indeed succeed in such an environment?
All this is not the case in Germany. If the student in school does not do well, it is not a matter of the discrimination, because the students from the Vietnam or from Poland or from Russia do very well. And it is a problem which points at these groups themselves.
And Steve Evans, the BBC's correspondent in Berlin, repeatedly, Mr. Sarrazin has made a distinction between what's happening in Germany and what might be happening elsewhere in the Western world. You've reported from many parts of the Western world. Do you think that distinction is a fair one?
I think it is a fair one. I mean, without embracing the whole book, that distinction does seem to be fair. You do have to ask a question, how or why do Vietnamese do so well in societies from Germany right across to California, and other groups not do very well at all? There is clearly something very complicated and cultural going on. It seems to me that the question then is, given that situation, what do you do about it? Because if there are underachieving groups because of culture, because of class, because of discrimination, because of genetics, whatever, what do you then do about it?
Well, you ask the question, Steve. There'll be people listening with backgrounds of every single country you've mentioned. Why don't we invite them to respond? How do we explain the difference in performance between one community in a country and another immigrant community in the same country? Do call us. It's country code 44 2070 83 72 72. Abdi Wahab in Egypt says Muslims shouldn't accept German values but respect them. You can't push away other people's norms and beliefs simply because you're an immigrant. Tabali says it wouldn't hurt for the Germans to accept some of the immigrant values. When I was growing up in Leeds, we used to learn and sing basic Hindi during music classes. Thanks very much to Nabila, who joined us from London, and thanks also to Randolph and Ulash, who are with us here in the studio in Berlin. Let's say hello to the next two guests who have sat down. Maybe you can introduce yourselves quickly.
Yes, my name is Jörg Schröder. I'm from Lower Saxony in northwestern Germany. And yes, I read your book with great interest. And
Jörg, I'm going to get you to hold your thought, because that music means the news is coming up. So we know who you are, but we'll wait 3 minutes to find out what your question's going to be. If you've got a question for Thilo Sarrazin, do email it in. It's worldhaveyoursay@bbc.com. We'll be back live from Berlin in 3 minutes' time.
You have heard the news from the BBC. Now it's your turn. Call country code 44 20 70 83 72 72. Welcome to World Have Your Say.
Hi everyone, this is Ros Atkins with you live from Berlin on World Have Your Say. Our guest today is Thilo Sarrazin, a former senior banker here in Germany, but now a man very closely associated with the debate about immigration and integration. He's written a book called Germany Does Away With Itself, which has sold over 1.2 million copies, and according to Steve Evans, the BBC's Berlin correspondent, it's entirely shifted the debate about immigration here in Germany. Kelly is listening in Canada. She says, I've been a student in Britain, France, the Netherlands and Germany. I experienced racism against me as a white female in Europe that I've never experienced here at home. Main's in Kenya getting in touch on Facebook. The most immigrants should be expected to do is to discern the ways of the hosts to avoid doing anything that's offensive. Integration, or whatever you want to call it, should just be a matter of choice. Dennis getting in touch on Facebook as well. Europeans should integrate when they settle in other continents. Lots of you are saying that. And Gerard's listening in Indonesia up late. He says, if immigrants in Berlin want to become citizens of Germany, then they have to take lessons in civics and learn to adopt German culture and the language. There's no other way. It is fair this way. And just before the news, Jörg was introducing himself, but we didn't have time for your questions. So over to you, Jörg.
Yes, finally we talked about differences among ethnic groups in Germany. And I think that's really the rehabilitation of the anthropological argument, which has been repressed so long by political correctness, which is counterproductive. And my question now to you, Mr. Sarrazin, is what would you recommend to transfer your conclusions into a practical political approach?
Well, two things. First, we have to do everything to improve the integration of people already here. This means more incentives. This certainly also means more pressure, and this also means a different social policy.
Pressure. Sir, let me
secondly,
just before you go on, pressure is a word which has certain connotations. What kind of pressure do you want to bring to bear?
For example, people who don't send their children to school don't get the child allowances anymore. This would not a very efficient
so
pressure. Financial pressure, but also the moral pressure. Each and every society has the moral climate which influences all the people that within the society, and we all are subject to the moral, the climate, but we also form it. We are formed by it, and we form it, and we have to create the right kind of moral climate.
And if Mr. Sarrazin ran for office, Jörg, and said he was going to do those things, would you vote for him?
Yes, I would do, certainly. Because I think that's one of the most important problems we have to face now.
And so, will you be running for office?
No,
would you like to be
I will
an
not
elected
run for
politician
anymore? I am the 65 years old. I said goodbye to politics 2 years ago, and that was that, and now I wrote that book.
Let's bring in Elif, who's been patiently waiting to speak to you in our studio in Hamburg. Elif, tell us a little bit about yourself and what your question... I apologise, you're in Munich rather than Hamburg. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your question for Mr. Sarrazin.
I'm a medical doctor. I'm a psychiatrist. I have a Turkish background. I'm actually born and raised in Germany, so I feel German. And I lived in the States for quite a while, and I haven't seen any Muslims having problems in the States. I think they're the problematic group, also because of socioeconomical background, are the Hispanics and the blacks. So to prove a former statement wrong. My question actually to Mr. Sarrazin is why he writes a book about a topic he's not an expert in. We have immigration researchers in Germany who are proving his numbers wrong. And also we have quite a bit of a success of immigration in Germany, and highly skilled, newly well-educated immigrants. Just to give you a few numbers from a study of the Federal Office for Migration and Refugees about Muslims in Germany, is that the highest positive dynamic and success in education. One sec. Let me just give you the number, and then Mr. Sarrazin can answer. In education is seen in Turkish immigrants. You have to.
Elif, I'm going to interrupt. Elif, yeah? I'm going to interrupt you because we've said to every single guest, and we've said to Mr. Sarrazin, if we can keep our questions short and our answers short, we'll get through a lot of things. Quoting statistics isn't necessarily going to get us too far. Let's start with the broader question that you ask, which is, why are you writing this book, Mr. Sarrazin, when there are many people in this country who probably know a great deal more about immigration, or certainly have studied it for longer?
I am not an expert on culture, but I'm an expert on economics and the statistics. And what we just heard was the Russian mathematics. If in the year 1 the Soviet Union produced the 3 tractors. In the year 2, it was 6 tractors. Then the number of the tractors rose by 100%. This is the Russian the mathematics, and we just heard the one piece of the Russian mathematics. The underachievement of immigrants from Turkey, the near Middle East and Africa is an undeniable statistical fact. I tried to explain this fact, and there remain only the racial factors, which I reject, or cultural factors, and part of the cultural factors is religion.
And Elif, let me ask you, you clearly aren't going to agree with Mr. Sarrazin on the statistics, but don't you welcome the fact that he's opened up this discussion, clearly a discussion that many Germans wanted to have?
Yeah, it's helping to drive government policy on minority integration, which is really obviously not done so far, and we have now a debate, and we have a lot of experts giving us the right direction. And I want to ask Mr. Sarrazin if he has learned from the debate he has caused, and if he's able to accept critique, and if he's able to correct some of his wrong assumptions in the book.
Well, I still did not find any kind of the wrong assumptions, but I certainly read all the critique, and I will try to learn from it.
Let me introduce you, sir, to 2 more people joining us on World Have Your Say Live from Berlin. One is sitting across the desk from me. Hi, Dirk. Thank you for coming in.
Yes, hello.
We also have Yenif, who's a student in Haifa in Israel. Yenif, thank you for joining us as well.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Well, Dirk, let me start with your question for Thilo Sarrazin.
Yes, okay. I'm Dirk. I'm from Berlin here too, and maybe I have to say I work for a media agency who's monitoring media. And first thing is, I would like to say to you, I really have to congratulate you how you managed to aggregate so much media alert in the past and still. And, well, my question is going into genetics, to chapter 8 of your book. And I read only that chapter, I have to admit, because you always ask people if you read the book and so on. And, well, I found out that you cited Richard Lynn. And I made a little research and found out, and I would just like to... Read it.
Dirk, what's your question?
Okay.
Let's cut to your question. What's your question for Mr. Sarrazin? He's sitting here. I've got a queue of people as long as my arm wanting to speak to him. Let's ask him a question which he can answer straight away.
Okay. Just my question is, are you in some kind step back from what you say in chapter 8, or are you saying...
you should read the chapter 8 in the combination with chapter 3, because in chapter 3 I laid the foundations on intelligence and the heritability.
And just to explain, sir, I just want to explain here, because there'll be plenty of people listening who haven't read your book. What we're essentially talking about here is, some people call it biological determination, essentially the idea that intelligence is passed from one person to another. It's received a lot of criticism. We talked about it a little bit with Steve Evans before the news. Do you regret expressing opinions with the confidence that you did?
No, because what I wrote is the mainstream of the scientific knowledge, and this mainstream says that 80% of the genotypic intelligence are the heritable, and about the 50% of the phenotypic intelligence are heritable.
We can debate.
This is the scientific mainstream.
Well, we can debate what the scientific mainstream is. One moment. I'm gonna Dirk, just. So if you could just hold your fire. I think this is worth pointing out. The German Life Sciences Association responded to your research by saying that essentially the genes which contribute to our cognitive ability are shared by all. There are not certain humans who have access to genes that others don't. So to assert that you are the scientific mainstream, obviously that's your opinion, but there are others who would dispute it.
Well, of course, we all have the similar genes. The genes which that determine the size of a man are shared by us all. Nevertheless, there exist the small people and large people, and the genes which determine the color of our eyes are shared by us all. Nevertheless, there exist blue eyes and black eyes.
And let me ask you, Dirk, then, and let's be clear. Let's be clear. Most scientists have responded to Thilo Sarrazin's conclusions by saying, of course, there are some genes we do not share, but the genes that affect our intelligence are shared by all. But you sound, Dirk, like you're glad that Mr. Sarrazin's putting this point of view, that you have some sympathy with it.
Yes, well, I have sympathy with him in that point that he pushed the discussion overall, because as we see at the media reaction,
Can you understand why some people might be nervous about Germans pushing this particular scientific argument?
Yes, sure, because of our past.
But it's not a reason to stop it.
No, and I would like to ask him if.
Just before you do, let's bring in Yennev, because he's been listening to the two of you talk. Yennev, you've been listening to this. Dirk saying it's right that we're talking about whether genes encourage intelligence. Some of us have genes that others don't. How do you react to him saying that there's a Jewish gene, for instance?
I don't think I'm qualified to answer such a question. I mean, personally, I think it sounds to me a little bit like racism, but I really don't think I'm qualified to know if there really does exist such a gene.
Does it make you uncomfortable?
Can you please repeat that?
Does it make you uncomfortable?
In a way, yeah, it does make me uncomfortable. I'm a descendant of a Holocaust survivor. And although, once again, I cannot contradict Mr. Sarrazin's logic, because this is not my area of expertise, it does remind me personally of some darker times.
Yennev, thank you very much indeed for being with us. Thanks also to our two guests in the studio who have made way for two more who I'll introduce you to in a moment. That was Jorg and Dirk. Thanks also to Elaf, who was joining us. I've just seen a couple of emails come in here. One is from Shahed, listening in London, saying, it seems that fascism is never far beneath the surface in some parts of Germany and Europe in general. This man should be sidelined as a fanatic, not selling millions of books. And of course, Mr. Sarrazin, that's not the first person to say that, to call you such things as a fascist. How do you react when people use such strong language?
Well, everyone has the responsibility for his own language. I'm the responsible for what I said. And I think that what I said was said with care and with deliberation, and after having done a lot of research, and it was said in the moderate way, and I am responsible for what I said. I'm not responsible for the misreadings by people who call me a fascist.
Shahid, if you're still listening, do tell us if Mr. Sarrazin's response satisfies you. Alan's listening in Arizona. He says, my wife teaches English as a second language in a predominantly Hispanic part of Phoenix. So many of her students' parents refuse to learn English. Because of this, she has a difficult time trying to convince the parents of what needs to be done for the students to progress in school. But Alan and the rest of you listening in the States, is it still necessary for every American and everyone living in America to learn English, or is it now accepted that some people may only speak Spanish, some people may only speak English, and does the language you speak really affect how American you are? Do email us, worldhaveyoursay @bbc.com. Let me bring in another guest now from Munich, and someone who's been very, very patiently waiting from Hamburg. I'm getting Hamburg and Munich mixed up, I apologise. Kubra is a journalist and also the first columnist in Germany to wear a hijab. Kubra, thanks for joining us.
Hi, hello.
And thank you very much for your patience, because I know that you've been listening for the last 45 minutes or so. What question would you like to ask Thilo Sarrazin?
Well, I have loads of questions, but I want to focus on one question. So my parents came here as guest workers, and I had the opportunity to study and be successful in Germany, and I have participated in many ways, but still I face discrimination. You have talked about school and that people do not face discrimination. I can show you loads of examples of people who do face discrimination in schools every day, and this is why they fail in school. So my question to you would be, you can't deny those facts. You can't deny that those women wearing the headscarf in Germany, that people shout at them, that they get beaten and everything. You can't deny these facts. Are you aware of the emotional environment that you have set? And also, what do you want me to do?
Well, I want you to integrate, and if you wear the headscarf, it's your own choice. But if you wear the headscarf, you should not be surprised if you are regarded by the environment as something separate.
So you say it's okay to be
discriminated? Those who wear the headscarf in the Germanys, they separate themselves on their own account from the mainstream of the society, and it's their own choice.
So you say we have to suit a certain norm to be accepted in Germany?
It's your own choice to wear a headscarf.
So it's my own choice to be discriminated. That's what you mean?
No, it's your own choice to wear a headscarf, and it's your own choice to live in Germany. You could as well live in the United States or in Turkey.
So you say I should leave the country if I don't feel comfortable?
In Berlin, girls who wear a light, the summer dress, are discriminated by the Turks and the Arabs. That's the fact in this country.
Also
you
a
are
fact
not
that
discriminated because you are a headscarf, you are a doctor and a psychiatrist.
So, but with my first question, you haven't answered my first question, which was, are you aware of the emotional environment you have set?
Well, the woman which lives in Germany told me some weeks ago, please don't take those aggravations, those mental aggravations too seriously. Oriental people tend to play with their emotions and love to raise guilt in others. The quote from the woman who lives in...
So this would be your answer to all those discriminations, to the death threat I have just received a couple of weeks ago?
It was only a quotation.
So, okay,
well,
so what would you...
One moment, Kubra.
Yeah.
Let me just ask Mr. Sarrazin, you're quoting it. Do you believe it? Do you believe that Muslims are more likely to make you feel guilty, are more likely to play with people's emotions to further their cause?
Well, in every discussions, there are two levels. There is a level of the fact, and there is a level of the feelings.
This is a simple question. You could say yes, or you could say no to it.
No, and what I don't like, and what I reject, is that somebody avoids the level of the facts by going on the level of the feelings.
But
these are different things.
But one moment, Kubra, I will come back to you, but we've got to be clear here. You quoted a woman to make a point, and the quote was that Muslims are more likely to play on people's emotions to make them feel guilty to further their point. I'm just asking you whether you believe that quotation is true. That's a question you can say yes or no to.
This has been my experience over the past 5 months. There is no discussion without a Turkish, the woman who tells me her father comes from East Turkey and all her family are insulted by my book.
So what's your evidence that Muslims are more emotional than Christians?
It was not the general remark. I only talked about the the strategies in discussions which I had over the last 5 months.
And sitting with us, Mr.
certainly
Sarrazin,
experience the strategies as I did right
and
now.
Kuba and all of you listening, sitting with us here at our studio table in Berlin, along with Mr. Sarrazin, Steve Evans, the BBC's Berlin correspondent, and two guests who are just joining us, one of which is Yüksel, who's a Muslim woman who lives here in Berlin. Do you think this is true, that Muslims are more likely to use emotion to make their point, more likely to manipulate and to use guilt? No. She's saying no. She's waving her hands at me. Kuba, have you ever heard anyone suggest such an opinion?
Well, I kind of can understand Mr. Sarrazin, because he's obviously always dealing with numbers and statistics, and he must have blanked out all his life emotions. This is why he might not be able to understand people who are who have to live with the consequences of the whole debate he has caused. So I have never heard of such a theory, but this would totally suit to your whole book, Mr. Sarrazin. But you cannot blank out emotions, because this is how we feel. You have just said a couple of minutes ago that we have to do everything to improve integration. But how are you going to integrate people if you always alienate them? If you tell them that they genetically cannot achieve the same things that other people can do, how can you expect these people to integrate?
You asked the question. Let's give Mr. Sarrazin an opportunity.
I have alienated nobody. When I call a fact, that's no alienation. That's calling a fact.
Let's bring in Marisol, who is with us live from the studios of WGCU in Southwest Florida. Marisol, what point would you like to make?
Well, in terms of discrimination, I mean, he hasn't been able, first of all, to give us a yes or no answer. And in agreement with the young lady that was talking, I would like to hear him kind of give us more facts, not just statistics, but more facts to make his point.
And when you say make his point, on one particular area?
Well, for me, as it pertains to dual languages now, I was educated in this country, okay? My parents came from Puerto Rico not speaking any English. However, they were able to survive, to be productive citizens of the United States. How were they able to accomplish that? I learned the English, and they utilized me to help them. And this went on for a couple of years as a young adult, and until they were able to at least learn it a little bit to defend themselves.
So, Marisol, your question is simply, why is it necessary that everyone speaks one language? Why are you making such a point of that, Mr. Sarrazin? Why can't this be a multilingual country?
Because I don't want it to be a multilingual country. I want it to be the German-speaking country, as well as the Danish people want that their country is a Danish-speaking country, and I don't think it's useful to produce problems which we did not have by the wrong kind of immigration. And I think that the United States would be better off if they also were careful with having two different leading languages in one country.
Marisol, thank you for joining us from Florida. Kuba as well in Hamburg. We appreciate your time. Yüksel, did you have a quick question?
Yes. From the migrant point of view, we agree that there are some deficits, but there are also a lot of migrant communities that are working on solutions. I don't know if you ever heard about Albert Schweitzer Gymnasium, which is in Neukölln. The organization I'm working for has successfully placed a teaching project.
Yüksel?
by supporting special education for the pupils.
I'm going to have to interrupt you, I'm afraid,
So
because Yüksel, I'm sorry, I've got to jump in because that music means we're at the end of the programme. I tell you what, I'm going to find out Thilo Sarrazin's answer to your question and post it on the blog. Thank you very much for your time, sir. Exactly, we'll get a written answer.